Thank you. And so these last two moved, what, Andrew and Phil?
Yes.
Right, so who would like to debate this? I'll put the question. Yep.
Should I provide some context? Because I think it might be useful if I provide some context on what I consider it means for the LTP and financially.
Well, except that, I think that people are pretty much made up their minds. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not wanting to be unhelpful or not ungrateful for your advice. And
also just on the second one, given your additional statement.
No. It says by means other than the sale of companies or shares in companies. So it rules out any asset sales at all.
Except that we may be doing that release of capital more slowly than years 2 and 3.
Yes, I know, but yeah, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, my amendment I thought would have been sufficient to see a change in this one, but there isn't. So let's just proceed, Andrew.
So these amendments won't come as any surprise. We have repeatedly talked about the sale of assets and the need for the sale of assets and other ways of raising capital. And whilst we welcome the broader conversation now about other ways of raising capital, and we certainly will support investigation of other ways of raising capital internally through ways of preference shares, debt raising in companies, all of the advice that we're hoping to get when our advisors report back on this, that doesn't change the fact that if we don't believe there is a need to sell assets or to sell shares in companies or sell companies, that we would be agreeing to do so. So the fact that there may be a future discussion about ways of raising capital which may not involve the sale of assets doesn't mean that we would agree to allow the sale of assets to remain part of that conversation. So that's the background to these amendments. Over the past weeks and over the past couple of days, there's been a lot of conversation around reducing capital budgets in particular and ways of reducing the work programme that Council is intending to deliver, reducing the size, changing the timing of that work programme. And a big part of our focus on the capital programme has been around alleviating or reducing the need for capital raising in general and the sale of assets in particular. So we continue to take the position that it is possible to come up with a budget which allows for capital raising to happen by ways other than the sale of companies or the shares in companies, other than by the sale of assets essentially, in the first year, and that we then expect to see a far-reaching, thorough and aggressive review of the capital programme and other areas of expenditure in the year between the 1st of July 2015 and the 30th of June 2016, that in turn would reduce the pressure on those budgets before we get to the time of the annual plan, so that we don't need to be proposing the sale of assets in years 2 and 3 of the plan. If we're successful in reducing capital programmes to a certain degree in year 1, then that allows the capacity for internal capital raising to be carried forward into years 2 and 3. And if we're successful in removing pressure on the budget by changing the capital programme in particular over that first year before we get to annual plan 2016, that will in fact reduce the need or possibly alleviate the need altogether for the sale of assets in years 2 and 3. So this is totally consistent with a position that we've taken quite publicly for some time. It continues to be our position, and we do not support the sale of assets where that sale of assets is unnecessary, and I would urge others around the council table, in response to the many submissions that we heard through the long-term plan process, both written and verbal, and some of those submissions certainly stated very intelligently, very clearly and very emotionally. I would encourage councillors to respond to those submissions by voting in favour of the amendments that we've got up there today.
Anyone else?
Are you going to put these separately?
No. Oh, yes, I am. I am putting them separately.
We're discussing both of them.
You spoke, I'm kind of in the middle, in that year one I don't agree with, but I am in agreement with not selling shares in strategic assets in years 2 and 3. And I particularly like Leanne's amendment about looking at the possibility of timing further out so that other assets can be encapsulated in that. That your actual wording there makes it a wee bit tricky to vote for. But I think that we can get through and find the money without selling any shares in strategic assets. The ones that we have now defined as strategic assets, the port, the airport and Orion. And I think that we can do that by a slightly longer raising of capital. So I'm happy, I'm going to vote against year one because I think there's potentially, I'm happy to vote against selling shares in strategic, now defined strategic assets, but you haven't done that, so you make it really hard.
I don't see strategic in there, so I'm not following what you're saying.
So that's what I'm saying, I'm caught.
She was saying that she would agree with it if it was strategic assets, but I mean,
In year 2 and 3.
the thing is that it is what it is. And and that's no, because other people have asked to speak, so we can't do that until we've got to a point where enough people have spoken. So you've spoken, and now Yanni.
I just strongly support these amendments. I think actually saying that we're not going to sell off our strategic assets unless we do more consultation isn't actually the right message to give our community. We have had 2 rounds of engagement and consultation on the issue of asset sales, and overwhelmingly the public have fed back to us that they do not support the asset sales agenda that we have put out as part of our financial strategy. And I think it's entirely reasonable that we can fund what we need to fund through other means and mechanisms, and whether that's capital release rather than sale, things like preference shares, bonds, and raising debt on some of those existing companies, I think we can do it. The reality is that a number of the anchor projects have been delayed, which gives us sufficiently enough headroom to be able to deal with the things that we need to deal with. The Mayor made the comment before in a previous debate that the taxpayers shouldn't pick up the under insurance that we had as a city. And I actually agree with that. But I do think the taxpayers should pick up the supersizing of our central city plan by the government, because it's that financial hole that we're actually struggling to fund. The government supersized our central city plan from 800 million to 2 billion, leaving a shortfall of $1.2 billion. That was an imposed cost on us by government. And so I think it's entirely fair that the huge increase in costs is met by the government. They are the ones that came out with an unconsulted on blueprint. They are the ones that imposed a series of costs on us as a city, whether it's the use of designations on public land, so effectively taking away what we owned and having to sell it to them, stopping us having the ability of putting back anchor projects or facilities in existing areas that would save us a lot of money. For example, if we'd been able to just build the convention centre back on its existing site, maybe with a slight increase or more than a slight increase, or keeping the existing library. I was so proud that this council decided to fix the town hall for the 3rd time, because actually that was an incredibly important strategic public and civic asset that we made a decision to keep. Unfortunately, we couldn't do the same for Centennial Pool. What has been the cost of that on our community and to our city? Huge. And we couldn't do it for the library. And I support a new Central City Library because we don't have any other choice. We've lost the old one, it's been demolished, but that was a perfectly good, sustainable building that could have been like this one we stand in today, retrofitted, refurbished, expanded, and made good for a fraction of the price of the imposed blueprint on us. So I think that asset sales is incredibly short-sighted, because I think what it does is it simply gets rid of things that raise revenue. It gives us less sovereignty over the important things that we control as a city, that I've been so proud being on the youth council, on a community board and now on the council, to have inherited from previous generations. And those assets have meant we've been able to achieve an awesome quality of life in our city before the earthquake and have helped us deal with some of the issues we've faced post-earthquake. And I don't believe getting rid of those assets that have been so incredibly valuable is the wise thing to do, particularly because the money is going into assets that are going to have a huge financial impact, whether it's the new stadium, whether it's the new Metro Sports facility. These facilities will have a huge cost to us ongoing. So will things like the Avon River precinct, the $100 million precinct that we have to incur the ongoing maintenance costs. And so simply the economic equation to me is, why would you sell off things that bring in revenue to invest in things that lose huge amounts of money? It doesn't seem a very sustainable or financially prudent thing to do, and I think the public submissions and the public engagement have overwhelmingly said to us that this isn't something they support, and so I urge you to listen to what the people have said and not sell off the assets and vote for these amendments.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll put the motion. Well, we'll deal with them two separately. So the first one, if you could put the screen up. It's lost. And the second one, that's also lost. So thanks very much for that. So that brings us, gosh, that's actually not bad, 5:05. And so now we're in a position to advise the auditor of the changes that we've made, and there will be some detailed advice provided to the auditor now, and they should be in a position to analyse that overnight, and we should be able to get a draft of the letter that Carleen and I are required to sign sometime tomorrow afternoon. That, fingers crossed that that's all going well. Then on Friday we'll come back here. I think we're due to commence at 9:30 on Friday, and I mean, we've got a meeting tomorrow, but that's an ordinary council meeting. It's just going to seem like such a come down after all this excitement. On Friday we'll have the overarching motion, which must remain the same. You know, so I mean, we can't make new amendments to it now. We've dealt with the amendments, and so we're able to advise the auditor that that's where we've got to, and they'll be providing their audit opinion for Friday. And on Friday, that's where I'm expecting us to have the big debate, where everyone, I think, will contribute to the debate, and people will be able to comment even on things that they've already commented on in the amendments process, so that we can resolve the LTP and get things on track. So, David, did you have a?
Is it absolutely necessary to start at 9:30? I've got a Trans Waste Board meeting. I could attend for a couple of hours, and if you had a 10 o'clock start.
I don't know. Have people got issues around the time? Eh?
I'm happy to go with the flow, but I can tell them no, I won't be there.
Okay.
But I just thought if we were... it would be fine.
Yeah, but there's quite a few motions that we've got to go through, I think, on Friday, so we'll do that. Yanni?
Just very quickly, there's the notice of motion tomorrow around the Legionnaires. If anyone's got concerns, can you please just let me know before the meeting? It's only asking for a report, so I didn't think it'd be contentious.
Yeah, no, I've
but
talked to staff. I think
yeah.
it's fine. Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. Hey? Yes, we've got an informal tomorrow morning. Yep. All right. Everyone's home, right? Well done. Very good. Thank you all very much. And I'll adjourn this meeting until Friday, and I'll see you all tomorrow morning.